Your relationship with money matters. I'm Michelle Perkins, and this is the Money and You podcast, where I will be breaking down your relationship with money, offering tough love money tips, and a money dating plan that will focus on lifting the barriers to success to help pave the way for better money practices and increased wealth. It's time to take control to live a limit-free life. It starts today. Hello, and welcome. I'm Michelle Perkins, your host of the Money and You show, here broadcast from ubngo.com, and I am very excited about our show today. It's a really important one. I hope you'll stay and listen. This is the foundational bit to managing and controlling and having a better relationship with your money. And I think everyone would benefit, me included. I can't wait to hear from our guest some of her tips and advice. And I'm gonna be brave, and I'm gonna tell you what we're talking about today, because I don't want you to run away, but we're gonna be talking about budgeting. So before you flee, this is people tend to be a little nervous about that word. So a lot of people call it a spending plan, or they pretty it up a little bit. But the bottom line is that this is so important. And even though the show, my company is Limit Free Life, I want you to have a limit-free life. And this is a big part of it, even though you might be thinking, ooh, restrictions and all kinds of controls. But this is what will set you free. And so a few key takeaways around budgeting. If you're like most folks, you probably aren't following financial expert advice about budgeting, and you really do need to craft and follow a budget. A budget is a spending plan that takes into account both current and future income and expenses. And having a budget keeps your spending in check and makes sure that your savings are on track for the future. So with that, I have a budgeting expert, Jennifer Trinidad, and she is, women hire her to help them feel confident with their budgeting plan so they can quickly reach their financial goals. She has a company called Budget Divas that was born out of knowing that by having an accountability partner, people will succeed and accomplish their financial goals faster. After years of trying to get her personal finances in order by saving money and cutting expenses, she found she was getting nowhere because she wasn't living on a budget. When she finally did a budget that worked for her family, they were able to pay off $90,000 in 4 years. But get this, $41,000 of that debt was paid off in 1 year. So let's welcome Jennifer Trinidad. Hi, Jennifer.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
I'm so happy that you're here. And I just am really excited to talk about something that we all need to be doing. I'm about to set my new 2022 budget. It's already February. I'm pretty late, but I have to go through the whole process. So please tell us, more about your background, how you got into this, and why.
Sure. So I started hearing about this crazy guy named Dave Ramsey back in 2012. And I thought, okay, that's great. He has this plan of how to get out of debt, how to live on a budget. But I was still in the mindset that I wanted to be able to spend money, go out with my friends, have a great time, have that YOLO attitude, you only live once kind of thing. And then I had transitioned then into a management position, which was a great opportunity. And it was great pay. It was a base salary plus commission. And I thought, okay, this is going to be the thing that's going to help us get our finances together, and we're not going to struggle anymore. But what happened was, when I got into that job, I wasn't doing a budget. So every time I would get a increase in my paycheck, or I would get a commission check, then I would just spend it. And to this day, I don't even know where that money went. It probably went to sushi or to Target. I always say that if you were to give me $100 bill in front of Target and tell me to walk it over to the nearest bank, I can tell you that I'll tell you that you're crazy. I would rather spend that money at Target than to walk it over to the bank and put it into my savings account. So it was in 2016 that we started getting really serious about getting our finances together. My son was heading into college. I knew that I only had a few years left before he went off to college. And with the job that I had, it was a great opportunity, but I had to work a lot of hours, weekends, nights. It was a management sales position. And I want to say that was the point where I felt this is my sick and tired of being sick and tired moment.
Mm-hmm.
I was sick and tired of being in debt. I was sick and tired of living paycheck to paycheck. And it was something that I just really needed to do for my family so that we would have a better future.
Yeah, thank
So
you. That's what were you going to I just interrupted you. What were you going to say?
But the first couple of years were really hard for us because I love Dave Ramsey. But as you know, Dave Ramsey says you need to live on a rice and beans diet and you can't go on vacations and you can't go to a restaurant unless you're working there. So the first 2 years, my husband and I, while we were trying to pay off debt, we didn't do anything.
Yeah.
We basically stayed home all the time. When our friends and family asked us to go out, we weren't going out with them. They kind of thought that we were having marriage problems because we were isolating ourselves so much. And then the freedom came when we decided to start telling our close friends and family what we were doing, that we were trying to get out of this $90,000 of debt. We were trying to build a better future for ourselves and for our family. And that was when I felt so much relief and that I was on the mountaintop. Because I thought that my friends and my family would not understand. They were so supportive and they kind of opened up to us too of how they were kind of struggling with their finances as well. And so we just created this community of people helping each other. You know, living in an expensive state in Hawaii, it's not uncommon to have 2, 3 jobs for a single family of maybe, husband, wife, a spouse with 2 kids.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So that was when we decided to really get serious. And in 2019, we were able to pay off $41,000 worth of debt just because we were living on a budget. We had opened ourselves up to our friends and family and told them what we were doing, surrounded ourselves with the right people. And in 2020, we were finally debt free.
Wow. That is a great story. And you brought up so many points that I just kind of want to go back to. The first one being just because we all kind of, well, I don't know about we all, but a lot of people have the idea that the whole issue is I don't make enough, so I just need to make more money. But with you're leaving out, this is an equation, and when you leave out the other side of the equation, it still doesn't work. So just because you're making more money, you just up your spending. And so, it's really what my grandfather used to say, which is it's not what you make, it's what you keep. And I really didn't understand what he was talking about all those years, but I do now. And that's how people who came to this country a long time ago and came with nothing, that's how they made it, because they had that mantra in their head, I think. And so super important to understand that making more money is great. You definitely want to strive to make more money, but you can just as easily spend that additional money as, so without an intentional plan and like you're saying, without a budget of some kind, it won't help you really. So, and then you also brought up the conversations you had with your family and friends, which is so important. This comes up a lot on this show, just how secretive we all are around our relationship with money. It's like we don't want anybody to know what we're doing with it or if we're having any problems. And that is really a deterrent to fixing things and to helping, actually it's bad for your relationship with money to do that. So I think what you did was really healthy and a really great opportunity for you to kind of share with them and also to let them start talking about it, because we don't talk about it. And most of us have issues of one kind or another with it. And it feels a lot better to talk it through, get ideas from other people. And then when everybody knows why you're not going out to dinner or whatever, people make new plans and people understand, and it just changes it. So I love that you brought that up.
Absolutely. I heard a quote that people would rather disclose like their weight than disclose how much money they make per year, because we identify with our salaries. We think, if you make X amount of money, you're a better person than somebody who doesn't make X amount of money.
Right.
And that is so not true.
Yeah.
And I love that you brought up the point of the more money you make, the more money you spend. Which is why when we finally started living on a budget or a spending plan, then it actually created freedom for us. Yes, it was very, very hard in the beginning to put those numbers down on paper and see how much debt we actually had. But then we could start making plans for our future. We looked at our budget and saw that some of the things that were in our spending category, we didn't need anymore, or we could live without it for a short amount of time. For example, my son was going to piano lessons and he was in the marching band. So he had to choose one or the other. It was really hard for him at first, but it was only for a short period of time that he had to give it up. And then my husband wasn't really going to the gym. So we decided to cut that out as well. And then we cut out other things like cable and other services that we didn't need. So once we did that, it felt empowering. It felt powerful that now we had this extra money in our budget and we could say to ourselves, what do we want to do with it? Do we want to pay off debt, or do we want to put it more into our savings? Do we want to take a trip? Did we want to save it for a future plan? And that was really what made me motivated to get out of debt, because now I felt more in control because of the budget.
Yeah, great point. It is a huge empowerment tool. And we don't think of it that way. We think of it as this very restrictive kind of document, like bunch of rules that we have to live by now, and it's going to mess up our fun and our life. And, really, I think that mindset shift, this is an empowerment tool. This is something that is going to, help me to gain control and feel good. Because that is what it does. It's a little painful at first. I agree, putting all those numbers down and really looking at things. But actually, seeing the true picture is also freeing, because our imaginations can go pretty wild, or we can just be completely, not in the know. We just don't really have any idea what's going on. And that never feels empowering. That doesn't feel good. So even if you get to know your money, understand it like you would another relationship where you have to get to know someone, you want to get to know them, it suddenly opens all the options for you. You just can't really do it any other way. So what are some of your, advice, your thoughts, your ideas on how to get started?
The first thing I would say is to be honest with yourself and to really think deep of why you want this. If you're doing it to please others, or you're doing it because it's something that some financial guru told you that you have to do, it's not going to get done. Once you have that I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired moment, that you're tired of living paycheck to paycheck, you're tired of giving all your money away to bills, credit cards, student loans, that's when you'll decide to make the change. And that's when you'll find it within yourself that you can do it and that you have the motivation to do it. The next step after that is to write everything down. You don't have to, go into Pinterest and find some fancy budgeting template. You can just use pen and paper and write everything down. You need to write down your income, what comes in every single month, your paychecks, if you have rental income, if you have child support, every single thing that comes into your bank account, write it down. Then write down your expenses. And the expenses portion is going to be the hardest part because you need to gather all of your documents together. But once you have that, then everything gets easier from there. So gather your bank statements, credit card statements, all of your bills, write it all down. And then the next step would be to see what you can eliminate. Like our example, we decided to eliminate the things that we weren't using or the things that we could put off so that we could have a better future. And once you do those 3 steps, you'll start to see traction into, oh, I thought I had only $25 left at the end of the month. Now I have 300, 400, 500. What do you want to do with that $500 after you pay all your bills and you put some money into savings? Then you can either put it to debt or you can bump up your savings so that you'll have a better future. So I would say those are the 3 things. One is just to be honest with yourself and to really think deep of what you want your financial life to be in the next coming year. And then second is to write down everything that comes into your bank account. And third is to write down all of your expenses, anything that's going out of your account.
Yeah, thank you. And do you typically take an average of those expenses for things that fluctuate from month to month? Do you just take a year's worth and average those, or how do you do it?
So one of the things that leaks a lot of money out of my budget is groceries.
Yeah, me too.
And because of the pandemic, grocery prices have skyrocketed. So I love this question because yes, you can do this either like in an Excel spreadsheet, or you could just do it with a pen and paper. Write down how much you spent for the last 3 months on groceries. So if you spent more in November and December because we had Christmas and Thanksgiving, then in January, it might have gone a little bit less. Maybe you still have food in your freezer, in your fridge, in your pantry. So not really taking the average, but seeing which months you're higher in that grocery category so that you can plan accordingly. So for example, I know that in November and December, I want to stock up on my baking items, on items that typically don't go on sale all year long. So my grocery bill is going to be a little bit higher in those months. Then when January comes, it's going to be a little lower because I still have food in my freezer and my fridge. And then in February, March, April, in the coming months, I can kind of plan accordingly for that. Another thing is look at your bills. Like, for example, your car insurance bill. If you're paying on a yearly basis, is it cheaper than to pay monthly or to pay every 6 months? You can plan for that by setting aside money. So putting money in a separate savings account so you can just pay it off all in one chunk and have those huge savings. For example, I know for certain companies, they charge a fee if you pay monthly. So it might make sense to just save that money on the side and then just pay it all in one chunk, and you don't have to worry about it for the next year.
Yeah, that's a great tip, because a lot of those, especially all insurances, if you're opting to pay monthly or even quarterly, you're paying more than if you could pay for the entire thing for the year. And there are other ones like that. And I love what you're saying, because there are so many expense items that you could potentially, maybe you can't eliminate them, but you might be able to reduce them. I think with all your utilities, you can, and your Wi-Fi, all of that, you can usually call your company and see if they have a deal, or you can negotiate down a little bit. Credit cards, you can sometimes negotiate down the interest rate. There are a lot of those that you can't totally get rid of, but you can change the amount that you're paying for them. So, very interesting. And I'm wondering too. I love that you brought up groceries, because that's definitely an interesting one for me. I spend a fortune on groceries. I actually love to grocery shop. It's kind of like my comfort food to just go in a grocery store and walk up and down the aisles. But with that, what I have my biggest problem with, I think, is sticking to a budget on that one, because I don't. It's like one area where I actually just don't restrict myself. I'm like, I would do it with clothes or with something else, but with groceries, I'm like, it's food. I can spend whatever I want. So it's interesting kind of where our minds go. And when you are trying to stick to this budget, do you always have it in mind so that when you do go to the grocery store throughout the month, for example, you kind of know where you're tallying where you are? That's something I don't do, but is that something you would recommend? Like, I know I've already spent 300, so I have 150 left for the month or whatever it is.
Great question. When I first started budgeting, yes, I used to tally everything that I had. So if I went to store one, store two, store three, putting that all into my Excel spreadsheet. When you start doing that, the lines get really long, right? Like you get more lines and cells that you have to put because you're going to the grocery store so much. So I've actually trained myself to only go to the grocery store once or twice a week.
Mm-hmm.
I like going once a week, especially if I'm going to Costco. Costco and Target are my downfalls for sure. If I'm going to go to Costco and Target, I know I'm going to be spending a lot of money just because they always have great deals. Everything is shiny and beautiful, and I want to buy everything in the store. So those are the two stores that I try to only go once or twice a week, and I go with a list.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
The great part about Costco and Target is that you can always look at their prices online, so you can compare.
Yeah.
If Costco is having a deal on bread, then you can look at Target to see if it's a better deal there and write it down and stick to your list.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I will say that when I go to Costco and Target, there may be some items that I haven't put on my list, but it might be a great deal. So it might be something that's on clearance or that's a reduced sale that I want to buy and stock up to use at a later time.
Mm-hmm.
So, allow some flexibility in your budget, maybe like a little cushion of $50 to $100 so that you can spend extra money on those items when you find them.
Yeah, thank you for that, because I think flexibility is so important everywhere in life. And and that also just allows you to stay consistent with this, because if any plan, whatever it is just too rigid, people tend to drop off from doing it. So that flexibility not only allows for some good decisions, because sometimes you're right, there'll be a great deal, and passing it up because you'll go outside of your budget may or may not be the best decision, but also just to keep you in the game doing this consistently. Without a little flexibility, that gets really hard. And I think that is a big part of the key, is to stay consistent and to do this for long enough that it becomes habit. But what else would you have to say about just budgeting in general, and also that piece about when you start having extra money at the end of the month? How intentional should people be with where that extra is going, and where would you suggest people put it?
Sure. So, one of my favorite tips is to start an Ally Bank savings account. If you haven't heard of Ally Bank, it's a free online savings account. It's ALLY.com. And what I like about this bank account is that you can divide your savings into buckets. So, say for example, you bank at Bank ABC, and that's your main bank. And so every single month, you want to transfer $100 of your paycheck into the online savings account. Once you transfer it into Ally Bank Savings, you can divide it into different buckets. So think of it as like envelopes or money jars where you would put, vacation funds, date night fund, Disneyland fund, or car fund. So you could say, I want $25 every single month to go into my car fund. I want $25 to go to Disneyland. I want $25 to go to Christmas. And the other $25 is for maybe miscellaneous. So that's a great way to use those extra savings, because we all know that once Christmas comes, we're not really thinking about Christmas all year long until November comes around, and it
True.
comes so fast.
Yeah.
But what if you could already have a set amount of money sitting in that savings account? So you know that when it comes to November, you're ready to start buying those presents and any other Christmas related items
Mm-hmm.
for the holidays with that budgeted allotted amount.
Right. And that's great, a great tip. Yeah, it's making me think of other gifts too, because there's so many gifts throughout the year, and a lot of times those don't get included in a budget. I think it's good to finish your budget and then try to figure out all the things you're forgetting and missing, because some of the things have a way of disappearing out of your mind. But what the question always seems to be, if I have extra money and I have debt, should I be saving or should I be paying off debt? And what would you say to people about that?
Great question. First, before you start paying off debt, you need an emergency fund. And some gurus would say start off with $1,000 a month. Here in Hawaii alone, $1,000 a month is not much for an emergency. So when we were in debt, we still bumped it up a little bit more so that we would have that cushion just in case we needed to get our cars fixed, or we had something that we didn't plan for and needed to fix it. It wouldn't be stressful. It wouldn't turn into a money fight. We could just pay it and then move on.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say start with a good cushion of an emergency fund that works for you. Don't make it too high, but make it just enough that feels comfortable for you. Then plan your savings, because we all know when school comes around in August and September. And if you have kids, you're going to need to buy school supplies, clothes, uniforms, etc. So you can put that money aside into an Ally Bank savings account. And then also Christmas. Once you have those two, then you can start paying down the extra with debt. But I would say set up those emergency funds and those savings buckets first, so that you don't have to worry about it. It's automatic, it's there when you need it, and then you can start aggressively paying down your debt.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So where does, how the typical advice is 3 to 6 months at least of emergency funds, in case you lose a job or something. So that's a little bigger than the emergency fund that is going to help you with some kind of a car repair or home repair or something like that. Where does that fit in?
I think it really depends how stable your job is and how comfortable you feel with not having a 3 to 6 months savings right off the bat.
Yeah.
So for us, our jobs were pretty stable. We were okay with just having $5,000 in our savings account for emergencies if we need to fix a repair for something.
Mm-hmm.
Then every single dollar after that, after we had filled up our buckets in our Ally Bank savings account, went straight to debt. Now, the other hand is we paid this off prior to the pandemic.
Yeah.
With the pandemic, if you feel scared to deplete your savings, or you want to bump it up to that 3 to 6 months emergency fund, I would do that first and then aggressively start paying down the debt. Then at least you're not stressed out and you can sleep better at night knowing that you have that money in a savings account.
Yeah.
But again, be sure that that savings is not part of your checking account. It needs to be in a bank that's away from your normal daily banking, or else that money will go to, pizza fund, date fund, vacations.
Yeah.
And it's strictly used only for emergencies.
Yeah, I love that, because you can't have an attached account that you can transfer easily. So your your Ally Bank account is a completely separate online account. You can't just. It takes some effort to move that money into your checking account, I guess is the point. And yeah, that's a great approach. And it does become a little out of sight, out of mind too. And so it tends to build and grow without. It's not really registering in your daily spending, and I love that. So, and I also love what you're saying, because you are allowing people to understand their own circumstances and deal with how they feel. If they're more nervous about a job loss than somebody else, then they can tweak it. And I guess that's been a big hang up of mine, is the people who are just, they have their rules and you have to follow them no matter what. And I really don't think that works for humans who have different life situations and live in different places. And so I really like what you're saying, that yes, you can build your own set of rules and, have them fit into your particular situation. And so tell me a little about, how you found yourself in debt in the first place. I mean, however, whatever level of detail you're willing to share, but I just like people to understand how that can happen. Because there are a couple of things that you brought up, and that was one, that you found yourself there. But this whole idea of getting sick and tired of being sick and tired, I love that. And I feel like we stay in that state a little longer than we should. Well, it's kind of like we stay in a job that we don't love a little longer than we should. And I feel like, how do you tune into that a little faster? Because with money, time is everything. So how do you get to that point maybe, or recognize that point before too many extra years have gone by?
Great question. Once I started paying attention to my finances, that's when I realized I had $70,000 worth of debt in student loans, and then the rest were credit cards and back taxes. When I started logging into my student loan account, the amount that I was paying every month was only going to the interest. Only a few dollars were going to the principal, and it made me sick.
Mm-hmm.
It told myself that, I'm going to be in debt for the next 50 plus years, probably after I'm gone, just because I was only paying the minimum, which was $283 a month. And then if I paid $300 a month, only a little portion of that was going to the principal. So once I started paying attention to everything that was coming in and going out, as well as back taxes and credit cards, the interest on the credit card is 20%, and it's massive.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Then that's when I really started tuning in and being focused on, okay, this makes me sick. This makes me want to curl up in bed and not get up in the morning. But if I actually do something about it, then I can get to my goals faster. And you're right. We can always make more money, but we can't make more time. And so when I was in that job, making a salary plus commissions and not paying attention to the money that was coming in, when I added up all of the extra income that was coming in and not knowing where it went, knowing that I could have put it towards my student loan debt and gotten debt out of faster, that was my breaking point as well. Yeah. So I would say the best advice is to be honest with yourself. You might have to have a little pity party in the beginning with whatever favorite snack that you have or whatever favorite drink that you have. But once you write it all down and then you know clear as day what you need to do moving forward, it'll help you steer yourself in the right direction. And also surround yourself with people who have gone through this process. People on Instagram or YouTube, there's a big debt-free community out there that you can surround yourself with those people to get motivated and start getting out of debt.
Yeah, thank you. That's great. There are so many fun things that you're bringing up. I really am enjoying the way you're talking about this. There were a couple of things that I'm curious about. When you and your husband sat down to do this, well, okay, the thing that really made me think about this was you're bringing up one of the most important things about money that we don't tend to focus on very much, which is our feelings. If you feel sad and depressed or frustrated or mad at yourself when you're looking at your money, that's something you've got to work through, because you don't want to run away from those feelings, so then you don't do this work. So I love that you said have a little pity party, do what you need to do. I don't think you should beat yourself up. You're taking the time to look at it so that you can improve it. And that's really what you should give yourself some credit for, regardless of what's happened. But you learn from all of this stuff. You learn from all of these mistakes. And looking at it is super important, even if it brings up some uncomfortable feelings. And I think that probably happens for everybody. And then when you sat down with your husband, because this can be a big deal to have these money conversations with your partner, or, if you have to have them with another person, it brings up feelings that are different for that person than they are for you. And sometimes those, the worlds collide. So how did you manage that? Was there anything special you would tell people to do when they sit down to have these initial conversations?
I really felt a shame of guilt because all the debt was mine. Coming into this marriage, my husband and I have been together for 10 years. We've been married for 5 years. It was really embarrassing to come to him and say, look, this is how much debt I have. And so at first, I thought it was only my responsibility to pay off the debt. But once we sat down and we started planning our future together, planning the dreams that we wanted to accomplish, the businesses that we wanted to start, the trips that we wanted to take, then that's when it started to get a little bit easier. And that's when he started telling me that this is not just my debt. We got married. This is our debt together. We're going to get out of it together. And then we're going to build a future together. So I would say the best advice is to be humble, to be honest with yourself, to be honest with your partner, and just say, look, this is my financial history. These are the habits that I need to change. And I need you to help me as my accountability partner to help me get through it. And at that point, if you have a very loving and caring spouse, they're not going to be like, you got yourself into that, you take care of it, it's not my problem. No, instead, they're going to be like, okay, how can we accomplish this together so that we can have a better future together?
Yeah. No, that's great. And I guess if you don't have that partner, you'll find out during these conversations, and you'll have to work that out too. Yeah, that's great, Jennifer. Tell us about Budget Divas.
Sure. So the one thing that I found before I started Budget Divas is people were asking us, I know you guys have been in debt for a while. How did you pay off $41,000 worth of debt in 1 year? And the answer that I always give is it's being intentional with your finances and not feeling sorry for yourself. Nobody told you to get a loan. Nobody forced your hand to go into credit card debt. And well, I shouldn't say you, me. So nobody forced myself to go into credit card debt, to not pay the IRS my taxes, to get that student loan. It was all on me. So I had nobody to blame but myself. So once I started realizing that, then I was like, if I got myself into this, then I can definitely get myself out of it. But doing it alone is really, really hard. And, my husband, he is the sweetest person ever. He will never say anything bad about me. So that was great. But I also needed an accountability partner to take off those rose-colored glasses and say, look, I know you're in debt and I know that you want to get here, but look at all the other things that you're doing right now that's preventing you from getting out of debt. So having that accountability partner just be very straightforward with me. And it was one of my really, really good friends that I consider her like my second mom. So when she had told me these are the things that you need to do to achieve financial success, it really helped push the barriers and made me make a lot of progress. So in Budget Divas, I want to be that accountability partner for women who are struggling with getting their finances together and just need somebody to hold their hand and say, this is where you currently are, this is where you want to be, and I'm going to help you get there.
Wow, that's great. I love that. And how does Budget Divas help people? What specifically can people do if they want an accountability buddy through your organization?
So with Budget Divas, it's a subscription model that you would get, the courses and me as your accountability partner helping you along the way. We focus on three pillars of financial success. One is living on a sustainable budget. And I say sustainable because many people don't want to live on a rice and beans diet. They still want to be able to, you know, have their cake and eat it too, but also be able to move forward.
Yeah.
And then the second one is to decrease your expenses. So, like I mentioned, groceries is a big leak in our budget. Always, even to this day, I still have to make sure that I'm not overspending on groceries. So, by decreasing your expenses, then you can stop the leaks from coming through and then start putting that towards your debt or your savings. And then the third one is to increase your income. Once you have your budget and you've decreased and exhausted all the expenses that you can cut out, the next step is to increase your income. And whether that's being part of the gig economy, doing side hustles, side jobs, other than what your current main job is, then that'll get you there a lot faster. And I'll help you along the way as your guide to achieve your financial goals. I do want to share a success story
love that.
of
Yes.
My friend Melanie, who joined the Budget Divas community in April of 2021. When she looked at her finances, she thought she was going to be out of student loan debt by May 2023. And when we started working together, she actually paid all of her student loans as of December 2021. So 2 years than she previously expected. She paid all of her debt off in 8 months.
Wow.
So it's really about just being intentional and having somebody there for you, cheering you along and giving you that advice and being the guide along the way.
Yeah. Thank you. I think you're bringing so much hope and so many great ideas to people who really want to transform this. And there are a lot of people out there who, just like you said, are sick and tired of being sick and tired. And so, yeah, this is great. And so how can people get in touch with you and find out more about how to subscribe to Budget Divas?
I do have a free webinar masterclass that I'm hosting this Friday, and I will give you the link to sign up. It's how to do your budget all in one night and be able to sleep. So some people think that doing a budget is going to take a really, really long time, but you can definitely get this done all at once. So if you're interested in signing up for that free class, it's budgetdivas.com/budgeting, or I'll provide you with the link as well so you can give it to your audience.
That would be great, and I will do that. That's great. Do you do that masterclass? Is that something that they could find again if they can't come to this one, or?
Yes, absolutely. So I do a masterclass once a month, and if you go to budgetdivas.com, you can sign up to get notified once when I do another masterclass.
Okay. Thank you. That's great. I think that's a great opportunity. I love that idea of doing that and being able to go to sleep knowing you've done it. So, Jennifer, thank you so much. I think this was really informative, and I love what you're doing. I love the success you've had with it and that you're helping other people have that success. So this really is the foundation. I've had so many guests on in the last year, and somewhere in the conversation, budgeting has just come up every time. So, I've kind of come to the conclusion that we've all got to do it. I mean, I'm one who has resisted it in the past. I've also done it in the past really effectively. So I know which works and which doesn't. And it's really important to do it, set it up, stay with it. And so thank you for all the great work you're doing out there in the world. And hopefully, audience, you will get in touch with Budget Divas and get on your own path toward budgeting and saving and creating, a more limit-free life. So thank you so much for joining us today, Jennifer. So appreciate it. Appreciate your time. And listeners, thank you for being here. If you're enjoying the Money and You show, please subscribe. Please leave reviews. You can find us on all the podcast platforms. And the Limit Free Life YouTube channel will be streaming live at ubngo.com Mondays at 7 o'clock p.m. And love your comments. You can reach me at Michelle with 2 L's at limitfreelife.com. I also have a free money offer on the Money Mindset page of my website, limitfreelife.com. And there you'll find out some ways to make really powerful money decisions. So go ahead and grab that freebie. And we look forward to seeing you next week.